Okay, good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this emergency board meeting of the East Main School District 63 Board of Education. Roll call, please.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Here.
Ms. Zach?
Here.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Gluskin?
Here.
Ms. Urban?
Here.
Mr. Simmons?
Here.
Ms. Brooke?
Here. Okay, before we get into our discussion, needless to say, we've had a lot of comments come in to the board's email. And I have consolidated them because there are mainly two main threads or thoughts, two viewpoints, I'm sorry. From Dr. Irene Yashina and Ms. Danielle Foley. They had addressed the board, basically stating their concern about the hybrid plan that was presented at Thursday's meeting about the children switching back to their first trimester teachers. Anne and Tom Ropsic, and please forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly, they have a concern about the district going remote from Thanksgiving to January. And then we had a statement from the EMEA, which is our teachers union, that the teachers state that they're absolutely okay with being remote if that is the decision that is made. And then there's a group of parents. And again, please forgive me if I mispronounce your names, but Barbara and Bob Raska, Michelle Catania, Catherine Pauley, Sarah Murphy, and Laura Sikorsky, who have requested that the board consider keeping schools open, and especially for the younger learners, those that are in grades K through 2. If you send an email now, I obviously will not be able to get to it. I will be able to get to it and acknowledge it later as we are now live. Ms. Piazza, have we received anything through the public comment link?
We have not.
Okay. Thank you. Before I forward it off to Dr. Clay, I just want to make a statement, opening statement, and that is this time period is very high stress. Talking about the education of our children is very emotional. It's very personal. It elicits very passionate views. And then in light of this past week with the election that has been hanging over our heads, and the fact that the number of cases have been increasing, it's a very, very high stress time. But I want us all to focus on, no matter what decision we make, not everyone is going to be happy. But we do need to make our decisions based on facts. And the facts right now are, as of this morning's paper, the state of Illinois, it has surpassed an 11% positivity rate. That is a fact. We can also quibble over details. The other thing that I want kind of to put out there as we start this discussion is that I know a lot of us want to know what neighboring districts are doing, but I think we have found out that we cannot compare ourselves to neighboring districts for a number of reasons. Never in a million years would I have thought that over 60% of our families would have chosen remote learning. Neighboring districts are flipped. 60% of their students are in person or greater. So again, something to keep in mind that we cannot always compare ourselves to our neighbors. We need to do what is best for our community. And finally, the last thing is that this is very fluid. As we know, we had a meeting Thursday evening. As of this morning, things have changed. That's in 3-4 days, and it's only going to continue changing. So I know in my heart of hearts that we will collectively make the best decision, but it has to be the best decision based on facts as well as what is best for our students. Okay. So I would like to forward it off to Dr. Clay, please.
All right, thank you, Alex. So where we are right now is we have our metrics that we've been communicating to our community and to our staff that state that a positivity rate above 8% would be a return to fully remote learning. We've had at least 3 consecutive days so far, November 4th, November 5th, and November 6th. For our school district, we're all 3 above 8%. There's a delay on getting that data, so we don't know what yesterday or today will bring. But we have clearly met the metrics that the board established. So it seems to me that we are risking a breach of trust if we back up on what we've been communicating to our families. Our families have been watching these, our staff's been watching these numbers, and this is what they were expecting to happen.
It would be nice if I wasn't muted, sorry. Board members, please. This is why we call this emergency meeting, so that we can discuss this. A decision needs to be made because we need to be able to communicate to our families what we are going to do. And I would also like input from everyone that is present.
Well, I don't like the idea of going immediately, I think if at all possible. I mean, I understand that these are the matrix that we decided upon, and this is what our community is expecting. And honestly, I think the governor is going to shut things down soon enough as it is. That's the way it's looking. That's, I think people in the community are even seeing that. I was at Costco yesterday, and there's items they're out of, like when we're going back 6 months ago, like toilet paper and stuff. People are starting to hoard. They know this is coming. But that being said, our parents need time to plan for what's going to go forward. When we met on Thursday, we had the plan that it was going to be a couple of weeks. If they need childcare, or they need to switch their work schedule or something. If at all possible, I'd like to give parents a little bit of time so that they can plan their lives around what is going to be happening. I mean, it was crazy. We all were there back in March when Friday at noon, you were told, okay, you're going home and you're staying home, and people were scrambling, and I don't want to have to do that again. So that's my take.
I agree with you, Ms. Urban. Thank you.
I agree with Sheila, because I know that like our district, our administrators needed time once we got to the point where we hit the metrics that we needed to go to hybrid. So our parents also need time to take care of, make arrangements for their children. So I agree. Just like the district needed time to move to hybrid, our parents need time to move away from it.
I agree with that as well. It took us 3 weeks to get started. We can't shut it down in 12 hours and let parents kind of flail on their own. I've been a big proponent for in-person learning. I'm seeing the signs on the wall too. So I'm not saying we need to go forever. And I was in agreement when we were saying we would shut down right before Thanksgiving and keep going. We may need to do it a little earlier, and I would be okay with that, but I can't really support shutting down as of tomorrow morning and just letting folks go and figure out what to do with their kids. I think we put a little bit of thought in that and shut down on a in a way that will allow parents to react, that will allow them to make other plans, that will allow us to do the same type of schedule we had in the daycare, where folks can drop their kids off if they have nowhere else to put them. I mean, I think that type of scenario needs to come out. And I think then it is what it is. I guess my other question would be, if we do choose to shut down, whether it's tomorrow or later on, how soon would we be able to start up if the metrics go the other way? I would assume at this point we would just announce that we will be shut down till Martin Luther King Day in either event, because I can't imagine metrics changing that quickly.
I think part of the conversation that we had at the board meeting too was the fact that there's a limited number of days now before Thanksgiving break, and we're scheduling to bring in additional students. I wonder if we shouldn't give some thought to, and this is what I think most of the emails that are coming in are saying, let's leave the current enrollment, the current hybrid, kindergarten through second in place. Maybe we should consider not moving forward with the rest of the grades at this point. It just sounds disruptive to me. Either they've been on remote, now they're going to go into this new setting for such a limited number of days, and then we're going to be remote again anyway. So I guess I would be a proponent of leaving kindergarten through second in place for the duration and not bringing in any additional students.
Tom, that's not a bad idea. My only concern again was if those parents who had, I think we're bringing third and fourth graders tomorrow. I'm sorry if I'm wrong on that, but if those parents had made plans to go back to work or whatever, realizing it's only 3 hours a day or whatnot, but we are still kind of messing with their plans. So maybe we need to do that. But I do like the idea of at least at a minimum, keeping going with what we already have.
Yeah, and I think too with the third and fourth graders, I know they're excited to come back. I totally get that. That's going to be a major disappointment for them. But I guess I'm thinking they've been in this remote mode. They're already used to it. It may not be such a major upset in terms of scheduling. And I can't say that for sure. I'm just, and the other thing I think we need to consider, what are the number of students affected? We're talking about 40% basically of the students that were coming back. And what number is that for third and fourth grade?
Dr. Clay, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Just a few points on that. I agree it would not make educational sense to bring our third and fourth graders in tomorrow. Our communication had clearly stated in bright red to parents, this could change depending on the metrics. That's been communicated. So our parents are aware that a sudden change can happen. One thing that I understand completely the concept of keeping K1 and 2 in, but I wonder what's the message? Are we saying it's too dangerous to have kids in school? We've met our metrics, but we're going to leave our youngest ones in school, and for how long? When does it become too dangerous for a 7-year-old to be at school?
So I would argue we're not sending that message. I mean, Dr. Arwadi just a couple of days ago said there has been no link to schools having massive outbreaks of COVID. And many health professionals have been saying this. So everything has been evolving, just like our decisions have been evolving, metrics have been evolving. It's not like March where hospitals are being overwhelmed. So there's a lot of metrics that say proceed cautiously. So I think the message would be is we're going to slow down because we are feeling like we may need to shut schools down. It may be coming, but we have not had major outbreaks. We feel we've been safe with the kids we have. And we're not going to go back and forth. So we're going to keep going. And we may need to send a message to parents that may change as of next week. Be prepared. But for now, we're going to keep going. So I think it's a matter of how you position that messaging. And I do feel like we're not necessarily saying anything is unsafe. Even if we bring the next batch of kids back, we would do it safely. I don't think we've ever said we wouldn't. And as I said, we've had no outbreaks. Other school districts around us, there's been no news coverage about massive outbreaks. Have there been cases? Yes, there have. There always will be until there's a vaccine. But they've been fairly minimal. And we're not bringing a lot of kids back. Our schools are 10% capacity probably, which means there's a lot of room for social distancing. Everybody's wearing masks. We're not feeding them lunch. Those are the places where you have outbreaks. So we've been doing it safely. I would disagree with that statement.
Well, Walter, For those out there, this is Sean Schleiser. I'm the Associate Superintendent, and I am the person who's the point person for the COVID management in the district. And while we have not had what's defined as an outbreak by the Illinois Department of Public Health, which is that you have 5 or more individuals in a classroom who are COVID positive, I can tell you that depending on how some testing goes over the next few days, we will have what constitutes an outbreak. Now, what you may be describing as a massive outbreak and what the Illinois Department of Public Health defines an outbreak are two different things. To say that we're not, or to suggest, I think, and I don't think you were suggesting this, but I have had community members suggest this to me, that we're having no problems. That is simply not true. We are having some issues. And remember that our schools are a reflection of our communities, and not just our communities, all the communities that feed our schools, including staff members. And we have a problem in society right now with an infectious disease, and our schools can only be insulated to some degree through social distancing. I understand what you're all saying. I don't know what the right answer is here, but safety is a major concern. We don't have outbreaks yet. I think it's a matter of time. And my other point is, someone mentioned, maybe it's you, Walter, how many kids we're bringing in 3rd and 4th grade. It's my count as of my most recent analysis was just about 400 kids. I'm sorry, that's remote. Let me give you the number of 3rd and 4th. It's about 390 kids, 395 kids, something like that.
So that's about 50% if the remote is 430 and...
No, I'm sorry, Walter. It's about 375 kids. 375. God, I keep messing this up. I'm looking at a lot of numbers. 152 and 124. That's 276. Okay. Now my math's right.
That's all right. That's more reasonable. I was going to say, otherwise it sounds like that's
a lower number. I gave you a worse number first. I'm at 270, 276.
And I honestly don't know we should be bringing those kids back right now. That I'm a little torn on.
I agree with Walter. I'm a little torn on the 3rd, 4th grade as well. I don't want to quibble over the numbers either, Alex. I agree with your point there. But I would say that some of the schools have not met those metrics that were defined. And we said we would discuss the possibility of some of those schools getting to go. And so I think that needs to be talked about. I know that some of the communities are almost half as high as, or maybe not quite that much, but 7.5% versus I thought it was like almost 13 in Des Plaines. So I feel like, we've talked about how our remote program is really good. And I wouldn't say that it's inequitable to require some students to be remote, because we've stated that our remote program is exceptional. So I do think we need to discuss if it's okay to allow some of the students to go because their communities haven't hit those metrics that we defined.
That is something that we do need to address. And Dr. Clay, I absolutely agree. It's, we're in such a hard place because of the fact that we see the writing on the wall, and yet those that are responsible, meaning our state government, needs to make the call, and they have not. And so we are now stuck. And I don't know about you, but I don't have a medical degree. I'm not a Dr. Fauci, so I can't speak to any of this in terms of, from a science standpoint, of what is right, of what is wrong. But I do know that we have to talk about honoring the trust that you mentioned, Dr. Clay, about what we said of our metrics. But at the same time, I can also make an argument. It's 3 weeks it's less than 3 weeks until Thanksgiving break. Do we keep those that are already there in there? Does that make sense to do? I don't know. I would love to hear other people's opinions for and against, because for every person that's for, there's going to be a person against, and I am keeping an open mind, and I would love to hear from other people's other viewpoints.
And I would specifically be interested in what the principals think on this.
Well,
I'm happy to.
go ahead, Cassie.
Go ahead, Lauren. Go ahead.
No,
Okay.
you first.
Okay. I wanted to bring up to Mr. Simmons, you and Dr. Clay at Thursday's board meeting brought up the different cultural differences that are impacting the choices that different families are making across the district. And certainly the job that you have as the board is to look at the district as a whole. And in turn, you've entrusted us as leaders of each of our communities to understand our communities best. And I think we talk about the beauty in that diversity over and over and over again. And I know from, our Apollo community that we have families that really, out of respect and out of honor for you as the representatives, aren't necessarily going to be the families that are going to speak out maybe at board meetings or reach out to you or communicate with you through language barriers or just out of respect for you culturally. And certainly that's not out of lack of concern or caring. So from the start, I do want to acknowledge that Des Plaines really has had a very high positivity rate consistently. We started the year with a higher remote population than we expected, and that's continued to go up. In the last week, an entire class size has gone up in our remote population. So we're now at over 2/3 of students choosing remote at Apollo. I can't speak for all the members of the Apollo community, but I do believe this is the way the community is trying to have their voices heard through the data, through the numbers that they're showing us by how they're having students come back to school. And in thinking about that, with the metrics being pretty clear in Des Plaines, we also have to recognize that in turn, we have students at every other school. Our students are at self-contained programs in Niles, in Glenview. We also have the dual program that is hybrid now at Nelson. So we have students at every one of our schools who come from that Des Plaines community. And I just think that's an important thing to consider as we navigate whatever's to come next.
I wanted to comment on Mr. Simmons' point about bringing additional students back. And I think with all of these scenarios, I think, what do we stand to gain and what do we stand to lose? And I do think from an educational perspective, while I think of the kids that are excited to come back and it doesn't feel good to say, well, no, not yet. You have to wait longer. None of us want to have to give that message. But I do think educationally, our students stand to gain very little by coming back for such a short period of time, which may be 9 days or it may be 2 days, depending on kind of what happens. And then I think about what we stand to lose, and we think about some of the health and safety pieces. We think about the trust that we have with our staff and our teachers. We've been reviewing these metrics with them and saying, we're here to keep you safe and have a safe working environment. And we value your contributions. And so I do worry about sort of, that trust becoming more fragile by sort of not following the metrics that have been agreed upon. I think, obviously it's a very, very difficult decision, but I think we have to just, again, weigh at what do we gain and what do we lose by the decisions that we make. Dr. Schleiser mentioned we haven't had any major outbreak yet, but, it's because we've been cautious and we've been making good decisions based on health and safety, and how tragic it would be if we made a decision after something like that were to happen. And that worries me.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
If I can piggyback on what Lauren was saying, everybody in this room at this meeting got into this because we care about kids, we care about adults, we care about education. We are advocates. It is our role to advocate for the safety of our staff and our students. And as these numbers keep jumping up, I know it's exciting to get kids in the building, and nobody loves kids more than I love kids. I want to see kids in our building, and I'm a parent also. it's safety. It's safety for kids. It's safety for our teachers. And we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the numbers are going to be, what people walking in our buildings might have. So we just need to do what's best for everybody, for our staff and our students. And right now, I don't know what the numbers are doing. The numbers have gone out of sight in the last week. And they're over 12% in displays, and half my school's displays, half my school's Niles. So I think it's our responsibility. While we want to see kids in school, this is a pandemic we're going through right now, hopefully once in a lifetime event, and we're going to do our best. And if not every student gets to be in a school, to be in the four walls of a school, well, sometimes that has to take a back seat to the safety and the well-being of everybody involved.
I also just wanted to speak to the thought of bringing additional grade levels back. Preschool is set to also come back tomorrow. We are a unique building in that we pull from all of the different communities in our district. So, I do worry about bringing those students back when we're thinking about the safety of the population, both staff and students. In addition, I think about the amount of time that it takes to build those routines with those youngest learners. And, if they're going to go home remote a few days after that, would it make sense to bring them back? Transitions are also typically hard for our youngest learners, that transition. So I just don't know if it makes sense to bring them back.
Going along with Barb's point, and Cassie mentioned this just a few minutes ago, our self-contained programs are district-wide programs that are serviced in schools across the district. 6 out of the 7 buildings have programs that draw in from at least more than one school. So while a school is its own zip code, the students there aren't always. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind as well when we're thinking about our district versus schools.
I would have a question for Ms. Pacheco about that, if you don't mind humoring me. If they're self-contained, I know probably for each school it's a little bit different, but if they're self-contained, are they interacting with other members? Like, for example, if there's kids at Nelson that are coming from other zip codes, are they interacting with the children that are from the Niles zip code? Or are they, because they're self-contained, just within amongst themselves? So is that actually a point of a problem?
They may not. It depends on that individualized education program and kind of what's in that plan. But the staff members that they work with are that building staff. And so those staff members then travel to other groups and work with other students that, might be in a general education setting and are just getting services for little things here and there. So we do have to think about that as well, that it's all shared staff between these programs.
Thank you.
And to add to Jen's point, in our self-contained programs, in some cases, it is literally impossible to social distance. And many of the children do not wear masks, but mask or no mask, if you're within 6 feet of someone, have proximal contact, if there's any sort of physical touching and so on, that can constitute close contact. So in our self-contained settings, if you've got occupational therapists to physical therapists, speech language, name your related service providers who go from room to room to room, who have had contacts with kids if they become positive, or that staff member, test positive, then we have to quarantine all those people. So this can spread very quickly and rapidly. And we've seen this happen to a small degree or a small extent in our district, but we've largely been able to contain it to this point. But we have a small percentage of kids in school up to this point, and staff.
Dr. Schleiser, would you mind sharing what are those numbers roughly of the number of bodies that are in each building?
Off the top of my head, I don't have the exact count. We have primary grade, we have kindergarten, we have primary grades in. We have related service providers in, self-contained special education, some interventionists, some reading literacy specialists. I don't know if our principals can give us a ballpark how many staff members in the building, including teaching assistants, secretaries, administrators, custodians. But I just don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. If any building administrators are able to share that, just a ballpark, I'd be very curious.
Yes, at Washington, we, even before we started bringing children back, we had 40 staff members coming to work. And then starting on Monday, we'll have 169 students, which is about 47% of Washington's population. That, I think, going back to the point of Alex talking about facts, we also have to talk about the reality of the amount of students this past weekend that parents have asked to go to remote. And I will have in first and second grade well into the mid-30s of students in remote classes because of that rise in COVID numbers.
And to piggyback off that with Kate, Melzer's numbers are similar to Washington's, and my requests for moving to remote have now begun in third and fourth grade, so that started Friday afternoon. So similarly to Kate, our remote classes are getting above 30, and I suspect by midweek, my third grade and fourth grade potentially could as well, depending on what decisions we make.
Thank you. That's really good information.
Alex, I wonder what is, and I think this was talked about a little bit ago, like what is the message we're sending, right? So 5 weeks ago, the board said, these are the metrics which we consider the danger zone and we're going to close schools. If you look at the COVID dashboard, these are the numbers that are in the red zone. So what message do we send to our families and our staff that say, yes, we're in the danger zone. We've acknowledged that's the danger zone, but you're still coming into the danger zone. And what is that message that we send to them? Like, we're okay. We've said this is not the safest place right now based on our numbers, but here we are and you're still coming. It's just that, that's just a message to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz.
I'm sorry, Alex, but that's where I am, because obviously there's so much gray area on every decision we've made and have to make during this thing. But I'm concerned and actually a little confused. I would not have recommended doing metrics for this very reason, because there's too much gray area. But when Walter suggested metrics and the board agreed to it, we put them together. And while the numbers were still low, we adjusted them to what we have now. Now, again, from my perspective, you're talking about adjusting them again. What message are we sending? I really do feel like it's a breach of the trust our community has in us. One of the things I talked about Thursday night was the only thing that we can offer people is some sense of stability, some consistency. And I would love to have our kids in, but I worry about the message we're sending here.
I'd have to respectfully disagree with that. I asked for some breakdown of what percentages of the communities attend which schools, but I wasn't provided with that information. So there are several schools that have not hit those metrics, and there are a lot of families that still want their kids in school. And so I feel like, to speak to that point, that the consistency, the back and forth, we took kids out of their original class, now we're going to plop them back in, now we're going to take them out. I really think that we should consider kindergarten and through second staying, especially for those schools that have not hit those metrics. That's what we also presented to them, that we would consider if there were communities that weren't at that 8%, that they could continue to go.
As you know, Kate, I'm going to respectfully disagree with that statement. I never have said that. that sentence that you're referring to gave us some flexibility in case we had a community that raged out of control, and we would want to maybe close that one down and not the rest of the district. It was never about cherry picking which schools would stay open and which schools would close. And I want to make a statement as one of the people in this meeting who's been in the district the longest, and there are people who've been involved in this district longer than I have. We've worked long and hard to get away from the us and them attitude that this district has suffered from for decades. And it is so much better. To pit the Melzer area, because it happens to be in a slightly better area against the rest of the district, is an equity issue that I can't support. And I think we should stop talking about it, because I think it undermines what we've worked for.
No, I'll disagree with that. I don't think that's what Katie said. I mean, she literally said that we need to look at areas and zip codes. She did not say Melzer or any other school, so I'm not sure where you got that from.
Well, because she's talking about Melzer and Nelson, Walter.
Well, she's talking about zip codes, but I mean, if we were truly, the way this is worded, I would agree with Katie the way she's addressing that as well.
I do want to point out one thing.
Go ahead.
Katie also mentioned that she requested percentages and didn't get them, but I don't think that's what you asked me, Katie. I think you asked me if we did the average for the district based on the percentage of students in each zip code, and I don't have the ability to do that.
If I may, I think, first of all, again, this goes back to, this is a very, we're getting a little passionate, and I think we need to just take it back a step. We all are here to make the right decision. Another one of our challenges as to why we cannot compare ourselves to other districts is that we pull from so many different communities. And just think of if Gemini were open right now, what would we do about Gemini? It pulls from every single community. Would we say, well, those that went to Apollo for elementary school and those that went to Twain, guess what? Because they live in Des Plaines or they went to Washington or wherever else, that they can't go to middle school. So you're going to have half of the kids in middle school, half not. So that's another challenge that we face. So I think that rather than saying zip code by zip code, I think, and I agree with the whole equity issue, we need to look at this as a district. And I know, I'm even thinking, I don't know. This is a very hard decision. Regardless of the decision we make, people are going to be unhappy. And I just think we need to pull it back a little bit.
So, in terms of the metrics, and I don't know that this would make much of a difference. And Scott, you mentioned maybe we wouldn't be able to really pull the numbers in this fashion, but I'm thinking from our database, can we not tell the number of students that we have enrolled by zip code and have a weighted average on this number? It sounds like it's just a pure average based on the numbers.
Yeah, we could, but I'm not.
And it may not change.
I'm not sure why you would do that.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to say if, in fact, overall, based on the number of students affected by each zip code, if that average could come down below that 8%, I'm just saying this hypothetically, that maybe we'd have a little bit more room to delay a closing.
I agree with that. That's what I was looking at, because if you look at Glenview, which is one of the higher ones, Glenview's probably 5, maybe 10% of our attendance. Niles and Warren Grove are probably the bigger chunk, with a little bit from a tiny part from Park Ridge, maybe 20%, 15% from Des Plaines. I don't know what the exact numbers are. But when I do kind of my own math, that makes it feel a little bit like we are under 8% as a community of schools. But even that being said, what I'm thinking, based on what I heard, and I appreciate all the principals' inputs, I'm kind of at the point of saying it probably does not make sense to bring additional kids back at this point. But I'm against closing the schools as of tomorrow and going completely back to remote learning. I think the kids that are there, we may want to start communicating with parents, say get ready. May happen a couple of days out, might be a couple of weeks out. We'll have to watch the trends for another day or two. But I think that's where I'm at right now.
Well, isn't it reasonable to think maybe that we have literally 10 school days left until Thanksgiving break, and that what if we said K through 2 will go this week, but as of the end of school on Friday, we're back to remote until January 20th? Just a thought.
I could agree with that.
I agree with that as well.
Could start changing where all of a sudden we see decreases, which is highly unlikely.
I agree with that as well. And I think it gives, as Ms. Urban and Ms. Katkowski said, it gives parents the time, even if it's just a day or 2 or 3, to make some arrangements so that, like the school district had 3 weeks, we have some time to plan for remote learning.
Other board members, I'd like to hear your feedback.
I mean, I agree with that as well. And I think we should tell our parents, if you have the ability to keep your child home immediately, keep them home, because we are concerned. And this is why we are looking to close by Friday. But I am concerned about just shutting it down and not giving parents enough notice on a Sunday night. And I'm sure there are a good amount of parents who will continue to send, but there's probably a good amount of parents that if they're concerned, they're going to be pulling those kids. I'm thinking about myself. I mean, my kids are long gone, but I would be very concerned about trying to find care for my kids if I was working and they're small. You can't just leave them. We have to give the parents some time. I don't think that it's another type of trust. Yes, we have to, we say what we're going to do, and then we got to do what we said. But we also want them to trust us that we're not going to leave them in the lurch. And I feel that if we don't give them time, we're kind of leaving them in the lurch. A couple of hours, 12 hours, whatever, that may not be enough time. But putting it out there that Friday we're going to do this, please start getting alternative arrangements for your children. My thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I agree. I think our parents do need time. I like the idea, as you guys have said, maybe not bringing back in additional students, but giving those that are there a week to make accommodations and do what they need to do for the parents.
So what I'm hearing is there's a proposal that we keep the students that we have through Friday. We do not bring anybody else in. And then effective Monday, November 16th, we are completely remote. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sorry. Go ahead, Janet.
My only other concern is we do have parents that we're expecting to send their kids back on Monday. And this doesn't give them any time to make arrangements for their kids. Is there anything we can do as a district to help them out for the rest of this week, like we're going to do for our kids who are currently in school? Just a question.
We had that discussion this afternoon with all the administrators, and we really couldn't come up with anything that made any sense that we could do. So we tried through a discussion. I don't know if the board has any ideas for that.
I mean, not that we want to compare ourselves with any district, but one of the largest districts, District 54, made an announcement on Friday that they are closed effective Monday. Granted, it is a couple extra days, but I think like anything, you think about a snow day, or you think about other emergencies where the school closes down, a water main break, or other things. I just think at that grade level, at that third, fourth grade level, and I agree with Scott, I think the parents were notified that there could be an abrupt closing, and we're trying to avoid that. But I would really be concerned that we don't bring any additional students back at this point, even for a couple of days.
I tend to agree at this point. I think the principals made that point, and I agree with them. It for a few days at this point. If the metrics were different, I would normally disagree. But the way the metrics are, it probably does not make sense to add bodies to the building, teachers, and everything else. I'm more concerned about keeping it open for the K through 2. The third and fourth graders are also, I think, more adept at kind of working by themselves and don't need, consistent supervision every single minute. So I think it makes it a little bit easier for me to say we're going to not give parents a lot of notice. Still not a great situation, but it is what it is at this point.
We're also talking about the pre-K kids too, if I'm not mistaken, not just third and fourth grade, correct?
Right. Yeah, you're right. That's the tougher one. Those are the parents that may actually have jobs or something else that they were, even for a few hours, were relying to get out. I don't know how you solve that.
I have to say though, based on our hybrid schedule, we have shortened our day to 2 hours. So I'm not quite, parents were going to have to drop off and pick up. It was a staggered schedule, so I'm not sure how hard it would be, but.
Sure.
And just something to speak to too is some of the requests we've gotten from families who have gone back to remote is that 3-4 hour day has been hard for them on their work schedule as well, because then they have to figure out, it's not that normal 8 hour day that we had. I know that's not for preschool, but just something to consider. Families have also been saying to us, these 3-4 hours make it hard. So that's why we want to keep our kids home from school.
Barb, have you been getting requests to drop kids out of preschool and go remote as well as some of the other schools have been getting?
We've had a handful of students, probably less than the other grade levels, but after the decision was made Thursday night, we did have a new parent, a new family that was going to start on Monday pull back because they didn't think it made sense for their child to come to school and then have a break. So we have had some requests to move to remote as well.
I do think at this point, we probably have to make the decision of not bringing additional kids back. As much as I hate to say that, but it's probably the right decision. But give the parents who are already there the opportunity to have their kids in for a few more days and then kind of shut down in an orderly manner rather than just doing it abruptly.
I would be interested to hear, again, building administrators, Scott, Sean, what your thought is in terms of the proposal of letting the students that are in class now go an additional week. What is your thought on that? I know part of this is keeping in line with what we had promised parents and so forth. And obviously parents have the option to back out at any point. But I am interested in hearing your thoughts on this.
I'll go.
Scott, you want to go? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I like Janet's recommendation or suggestion of communicating to parents that it's fine if you choose to keep your kids home, but we're doing a 5-day transition. My question as the guy that has to try to make these decisions is there a point in the next 5 days where we should pull the plug? Are we just saying we're staying 5 days regardless of what happens, or do we set some other kind of parameter that says, if by Wednesday this is happening, Wednesday is going to be our last day? And I can go either way on that. Principals?
Ms. Mackey?
Scott's done that to me twice, I just want to point out, and I'm not a big talker on these, but I agree with what Dr. Clay just said. I think that would be fair to our K through 2 staff. Mm-hmm. I understand what everyone is saying, but we will have staff in our building, and as Kate said, some of our buildings have a larger amount, and I think that there needs to be a line at which we say it is not okay for our staff to be in that position.
I agree. I'm just concerned again about the safety and the well-being of the adults and kids in the building for the next week as the numbers rise and as people are near each other, just their safety.
I'm going to throw this out then. And again, it gives the parents at least 48 hours. Is there an opportunity that we just bring the kids back Monday and Tuesday and be done with it? Or even a day? I agree with everybody that this 12-hour notice is really going to be tough on parents. I'm sure it is. But I think if you give somebody a day or two's notice, that might be, more reasonable.
I agree. I agree with you, Tom, because I was initially thinking maybe the schools are shut down by Wednesday because I think they need at least a day or two So it doesn't have to be all week. It could be, okay, we're just going to do this Monday, Tuesday, please, make other arrangements. It doesn't have to be a whole week. I mean, and you had brought up the point that the one school said, whatever district it was, they told their parents on Friday, so they had the weekend to take care of things. It doesn't have to be a whole week, but we have to give them a day or two, I feel, to make arrangements. So I'm flexible with that.
Yeah, I think 2 days makes sense. I think that's a good recommendation. Part of the thing that made this so difficult is because we had all those kids scheduled to come back tomorrow, and we had reached the parameters or the metrics, so we had to make some kind of decision here. So if that hadn't been on the table, this would have been a much easier discussion, probably.
Agreed. I'm okay with Wednesday. I really am not okay with just shutting down tonight for all the kids that are already going. I think Wednesday makes sense.
So, Walter, you're saying that we're closed effective Wednesday?
That's what I heard. I think January.
Okay, right. I'm okay with that. Clear on that. So open
Monday is probably not going to make a dramatic difference. I just want to make sure parents have. Even Chicago during the height of this all, they stayed open on Monday and Tuesday, I think, before they shut it down. Whereas other districts were shutting down to give parents a chance.
Yeah, they were open. The announcement came on a Friday. We were open on Monday, and then it was shut down on Tuesday.
And again, we can argue all day long about what's right or what's not right, and 50% of people are going to agree or disagree, but I do think at least one is reasonable.
Other board members, how do you feel about Wednesday? That's it, we're shut down.
I think that is reasonable to give parents that amount of time. That's kind of where I was going at the start of this, was that I just think it was too quick to allow people that had been having their kids in place to give them a little bit of notice. So I'm fine with that. So it's an unfortunate situation that nobody should be in. The kids shouldn't be in it. The staff shouldn't be in it. Our administrators shouldn't be in it. Our society shouldn't be here. So looking towards the future, I think 21 is going to be a great year, and we need to just go with that. So
sure. Yeah. Sure, Sheila.
Don't burst my bubble, all right, Scott?
Other board members?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm hearing a consensus for Wednesday that we will be 100% remote.
Yes. Yes. Can I just ask, and I don't even know if it probably hasn't even been thought about yet, but if we're closing now, and we had talked on Thursday about coming back in January and switching kids back, then now, I mean, some administrators were saying some of our remote classes are 30 plus at this point, and we're sending everybody to remote on Wednesday. It just seems like we're putting extra pressure where it may not need to be at this point, if we know moving forward where we want to go.
Well, the teachers who are teaching hybrid right now would just go remote and keep those kids. So we wouldn't be enlarging the remote classes. The main reason we can't do it any earlier is it just takes time to change all the information and get those set up before we can do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments, concerns? Now's the time for us to discuss this.
The only other thing I'll throw out there, which is something a little bit different than we're talking about, but it's when we come back in January. I know there's some districts that are talking about testing students and staff. I would just ask us to understand if that's an option for us or not. But I don't know that we have a discussion on it.
We've just received some information on that earlier last week. So We haven't really had a chance to talk about it, but it's definitely something we can do.
Thank you. I just want us to think about it, that's all.
Sure.
Because I think it would make everybody much more comfortable if there's at least random testing going on.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Just for clarification to the families out there that were using the FRC at the beginning of the year, could you clarify if that will be open or not? I'm assuming the answer is no, but I'd like you to say it.
Yeah, because we're closing down during this high positivity rate period, no, we won't be offering that at the FRC. Angie, you want to talk about what will happen for the next couple days, though?
Just thinking about it, I would say that we continue to serve the kids that would have been going to the FRC, which would have been our 5th through 8th graders, as we're still set up for that for the next 2 days, and our full daycare kids. But then beyond that, I feel as our metrics are where they are at, and safety is our main concern, that we do close.
Would we consider, if a week later the metrics start going down, would we consider opening FRC for those families that need it?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I realize that's unfortunately unlikely, but I have to ask.
Right.
I do want to say that we do have kids that come in the afternoon that do go K1, but because of the increased levels of exposure that brings with the bus ride over and then being in multi-age groups, I'm not sure that we can or should continue to do that.
Angie, when we started the FRC, did we start that in March when we shut down?
We did not. We started that in August.
August, okay. That's what I thought. All right, thank you.
I have one other question about January. I was just wondering if in January, when we go back, is that going to be a phased-in approach, or are all of the children starting on that start date? Or are we phasing it in by grade again?
A few days ago, we thought, since we'd already had most of our kids had some school, at least in our elementaries, that it wouldn't need to be a phase-in at that level. We were still talking about Gemini, but now that we're not getting 3rd and 4th back in and 5th grade, we may have to talk about that. We just don't know yet.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I just want to thank you for doing what's best for our staff and our students, and continually looking out for the well-being of everybody and being open to new ideas.
Thank you for what you all do at the district level, at the building level, it's we all, as I said, I know in my heart of hearts that we are all making what we feel is the best decision for our students, despite being painful.
And Alex, I'd just like to say too that you had started out by mentioning that this is emotional, and I'm certainly prone to being a victim of my emotions when we start talking about students and safety, especially when we're talk about equity of services to everybody. I know, as you just said, that everybody in this meeting is here for the right reasons and has not said anything that would indicate otherwise. It's just a lot of mixed points of view and no clear path for any of us, really.
Thank you, Dr. Clay. And it's true, as I said, I do strongly believe that this is not a decision that school districts should be making on individual bases. I think that given that this is an infectious disease, this needs to be coming from the state level, and the fact that we're even in this situation is frustrating, and I know everyone is feeling it. So thank you all for your honesty, your thoughts, being open-minded, because we all have to do this collaboratively in order to make the right decision. So to recap, we will be notifying our families that for those students that are currently in our buildings, they will be going back in tomorrow and Tuesday. We will not be bringing in any other students, regrettably. And that Wednesday, which is November 11th, Veterans Day, we will be 100% remote.
Sounds right.
Okay. Any other final comments, concerns? No? Okay, again, thank you everyone for coming together on such short notice, but obviously this was a very important discussion to be had today. So could I please have a motion to adjourn the emergency meeting of the Board of Education?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Zeck? Ms. Zeck? Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
Ms. Urban? Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
And Ms. Ketchkowski?
Yes.
And Debbie, Crystal was
Debbie,
trying to respond. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yes.
Yes. Okay. And that motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.